Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, ranked in the top 2% of over 7 million podcasts on Spotify. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Wong. Today, we're with Vishnu. Can you give us a brief description of your background, Vishnu?
Yeah, hi. Nice to meet you, Tony. Thanks for having me on. My name is Vishnu Hari. Grew up between Singapore and Canada. Started my work in AI research in 2011, 2012. Trained my first model around then in the University of Toronto, and started to realize that AI was going to be really huge. Specifically, my research was in astrophysics. I was trying to find exoplanets, planets that can harbor habitable life in other solar systems. Um, and I did my research in training really simple models to find extraterrestrial life. And I realized that deep learning and AI was going to be the future of the world. So I dropped out of my PhD and moved to San Francisco. Worked in AI research at Facebook before founding this company. I went through a program called Y Combinator. And the reason I founded this company is because the missing piece, I believe, in every AGI lab's attempt at creating AGI is how to make the AGI systems feel more human and fun, just like us having a conversation. And there's many elements to that we're building for.
That's cool. So the top of every consumer AI retention leaderboard right now is dominated by character apps. So like products where users come back to talk to a persona, not to get work done.
Right.
A lot of like the serious labs right now, they're calling this category like a sideshow. Like, how did the people with like billions in compute miss the actual product?
Because they haven't really accounted for humanity in the characters. Characters are single use, they exist, they don't really live lives. You can't talk to them or anything. Like Tony, I could ask you what you did yesterday or the week before, and we could have a whole conversation about that. You can't do that with these characters because they're prompted from, just basically existing IP or just some imagination of the creator. And surface level, all you can really do is therapy, which is projecting your own desires onto the character and getting advice from it. Or you can do role play, which is pretty much what everyone uses character AI for. And oftentimes it leads into adult content. The reason is because there's nothing else you can do with these characters beyond those sort of two modes of what I call behavior collapse. But if we go into a Discord server or go into a Roblox game, you can talk to any human and it could feel like you could read their personalities and figure out they have an internal life, and you can talk to them about truly anything. That's what I foundationally believe to be causing the retention problem.
And time spent on like character AI products has lapsed every like productivity tool by like a large order of magnitude. The labs see the data and still don't build for it. Can you give us some insight as to why?
Because it's dangerous. Humanness is dangerous. It's uncontrollable. It's unchained. We as people can say whatever we want. We can dress however we want. We can express whatever we want to express. And that is a generally signaling risk for the research labs. And secondly, probably not enough of a revenue opportunity for them to consider in contrast with, like a B2B SaaS approach, right? Everybody wants coding agents. Everybody wants, things that can make their life easier in some sort of like enterprise level way. But for humanness and behavior, that's just fun. Entertainment is not really seen very seriously in the AR labs.
And then like the biggest model providers right now, they all shipped like persistent memory in the last 6 months. Did that destroy the moat for like the memory first startups, or did that expose like how shallow theirs was?
I don't think it destroyed the mode at all. I'd argue that actually the persistent memory layer hasn't been really figured out, at least especially not on the consumer level. Persistent memory, even like RAG-based approaches, are not really sustainable in large context scenarios. Like sitting there and talking to a character, or like even like a coding agent and having it forget stuff that you mentioned like 2 months ago, 3 months ago is still a persistent problem. And even keeping memory within sessions is still not a solved problem. So I think there's still a ton of moats for memory-based startups to do something really interesting.
Two or more frontier models launched this quarter. Both of them broke benchmarks, which were not surprised. Neither of them have shipped a personality anyone can really describe. Do you think that that's like a feature or like a failure?
It's a failure because you can't measure personality. There is no such benchmark that exists that can truly measure how a human feels and vibes with. There's no benchmark for how good a movie is or how great a song is. You just feel it. And because you can't measure it, people avoid it. But that's a huge problem because people anthropomorphize their tools. We give names to our agents. It's a natural human instinct to want to bring body and personality and, dare I say, ego to the things that we work with. And that's a huge opportunity for us at Ego.
And then for like Frontier Labs, they all shipped like these personality preset modes in the last year. Most of them feel like the same model wearing like different hats. I guess like why does it stick? Like what's the actual objective with it?
A lot of problems. I mean, they do it just to say they did it, but the reality is the reason they always kind of collapse into being the same person is because they're trained and designed to be the same type of person. That's a model failure in training, in the training side of things. But the second thing is intention. The frontier labs don't really intend for these things to feel like they have life or like an internal, degree of ethics or like whatever, like personality. Um, that's what I think see as a major failure mode because all of the use cases are based on intelligence and tooling and the ability to solve problems and reason through them and not talk to you about their day or like kind of complain about stuff or go watch and consume content and have that affect them. Um, more strategically, they don't really care too much about the continual learning piece of like how the agents can learn as they interact with humans and how the humans can learn as they interact with agents. What ends up happening is that we then adopt the conversational cadence and tone of the AI rather than the other way around. Um, that's what the labs are seeing, and that's why they're not really paying too much attention to this, in my opinion.
And there's a moment in like the best simulated worlds where you can stop caring whether like the thing in front of you is driven by a person or a code. What's like the simplest thing that has to be true for that moment to happen?
In fact, I would argue that's already happened in games, even pre-modern AI era. There's a game called Shadow of Mordor. They have a system called the Nemesis system, where the orcs themselves have personal beefs with you that kind of evolve over time. This system's actually trademarked by Warner Brothers because it's that good. It feels like these characters actually are beefing with you personally, and you really want to like settle the beef. So you don't truly need a hyper-intelligent context-aware system to do that. You can actually simulate it to a large degree. We already do with our imagination. We've already kind of done it in games to a certain degree. What I argue is actually missing is a real-time approach of you talking to these characters, understanding their theory of mind of you and your theory of mind of them. That is completely missing, and that's what we're focusing on at Ego.
In my opinion, like an agent that remembers everything is unusable
Mhm.
because there's just too much context. So an agent that remembers everything is unusable. An agent that remembers nothing is forgettable. So, in your opinion, how do you decide what an agent should forget?
Well, let's think about how it works for humans, right? Sometimes we'll meet a friend that we haven't seen in a long time, and we won't really remember a lot of the key details of our relationship with them and how it evolved over time, but they'll remind you. And then it'll spark a memory. Why? Because there's reward associated with remembering that. You probably had a great time with them at Disneyland, for example. And then you go, oh, yeah, remember that one time that happened? And you go, oh, yeah, yeah, of course I did. So I actually think reward-based loops are actually the key to unlocking memories that are important to the user on the other end and then feeds back into the agent to get them to update their priors on actually what is important for the users they're talking to. That's my opinion.
And there's like a newest like research benchmark that just elevated selective forgetting, which I think is kind of an interesting
Yeah.
class to like a first class capability. So separate from like retrieval. Why was that hiding in plain sight for so long?
Well, because we wanted the AI to remember everything. We just thought that we could treat it like a database and just rag our way through to the accurate piece of information we needed. That's actually not true. You actually have to forget, especially in consumer use cases, because what you're dealing with is other humans. Forgetting things is actually kind of fun, and that's kind of why we sleep as well. We kind of like if you think of the neurological process of sleep, you kind of go in and your brain recycles through all your day's memories and kind of discards things that are not that important. And I think the reason it's been avoided in all of AI and engineering and tech in general is because you could always record everything. So you must, right? But you don't have to.
So I have an interesting thought experiment. So like imagine you have an agent that's known a user for like 2 years and has a model of them that's probably like wrong by now, right? So 2 years has passed. Right now they've changed. How does it update without like erasing the relationship?
It depends on the cadence at which the agent talks to the human. If it's continually talking at a weak level, like just the best corollary here is your best friend. You're going to talk to them. They're going to always have the most updated version of you. But if you haven't spoken to an old friend in 2 to 3 years, you spend a long time in real time talking to them and catching up. And in that moment, you discard or choose to keep what's actually important based on how you think the person is feeling about the conversation, right? Based on the topicality of the conversation. All of these things will change in that one interaction if you've not interacted for a long time. It's exactly like catching up with an old friend, and that's what potentially makes AI feel more human.
And then chip vendors right now are like shipping these like small model character stacks bundled with their silicon, which I think is kind of interesting. Like, what does it mean to compete with like infrastructure now that arrives free in the box?
It depends on exactly the kind of infrastructure we're talking about. I know of some companies that are actually literally, burning the weights into silicon, and that's super cool. You get extremely fast token output, and that's awesome. Um, it depends on what they're actually doing with the models they're shipping. Like, yeah, they're toy companies, and that's fine. They're like limited use cases, and they're good for like, a very specific task or like, entertainment for kids, whatever it is. That's okay. What we want is for us to have the AI feel like a human that can traverse context, not just exist in one context, right? Like, I'll play with my friends in World of Warcraft, and then after that, we'll go out for beers, or we'll go watch Netflix together at a watch party. All of those things require humanness, and that's our interest. So, singular, entirely verticalized use cases are not that interesting to us. We want to make Samantha from her happen, and Samantha can cross boundaries. That's what we want.
Now, more than half of game developers at the last major like industry conference said that they don't want generative AI in their pipelines. Do you think like they're wrong, or has the industry just done a bad job of showing them like what good looks like?
It's both. It feeds into both. Slop is a real thing. It's a real problem. It's what we even spoke about earlier, where like, yeah, if you make the AI to say the same thing, it's just going to say the same thing. Even if you ask four different personalities, it's just going to do the same thing. That's an architectural and like, conscious decision that these research labs have made. So I don't think the industry's done a good job. Secondly, we pivoted away from games entirely because we didn't really see the ability for us to use AI to make new types of gameplay loops. And they're probably saying the same thing, right? Like, this is a great tool to like write a lot of code, but is it going to make people happy? I don't think so. I don't see it yet. And that's why we're turning to like a lot of foundational work. So the third problem is that there is an ideological divide between the artists who are creating great stories and the sort of corporate execs who want to reduce cost. And that is an entirely like different, that's a problem that's actually affecting every industry. I don't know how that's going to play out. I do think new tools are incredible, and we had the exact same thing happen when the games industry went from 2D to 3D in the late 90s and 2000s. There's a lot of people who said you can't make great games in 3D. It looks terrible. Yeah, it looked terrible back then. Look at it now, right? So people aren't really accounting for how the technology is going to evolve and get better and better over time. So that's my take.
So, like a year ago, there were zero open protocols for agent portability. Today, there's like half a dozen competing ones. In your opinion, what changed in the math that made walled gardens just stop making sense?
Because no one was deriving any sort of consumer value from a singular walled garden. Like my IG AI bot, like, why do I care? Like, okay, what does it really do for me, and how does it really understand me in this one singular context? Doesn't actually translate to anything of value for the end user. However, what changed is OpenClaw. That's my true opinion, is that what OpenClaw exposed is the ability you could truly create a personal AI that can understand every single context and piece together a full picture of who you are and what you need and how you need it. And that was the moment, and that's what everyone caught on to. And everyone said, okay, well, now let's build a near maze agent that can do the same thing. Incredible. People find it. People like it. They find value in it. Honestly, all credit goes to open source for this.
So I find this next question interesting, which is like characters built for screens are now landing in like a humanoid robot body.
Mhm.
What stays the same when like an agent crosses from a screen into a body, and then also like what completely breaks?
Depends on the screen. Is it a game, which is a simulation of reality, or is it just a screen like Grok's Annie? Depends on how you'd kind of think about the agent and how you interact with the agent. In simulated environments and games, the translation is actually relatively one-to-one. You can see that in self-driving cars. They were actually built and tested in game environments first before they were, put into an actual vehicle, right? I'd say it's relatively one-to-one if you can actually get it to move and behave in a robot the same way it does in a human. We can't do that quite yet. It's still very robotic. But imagine a future where it does, then yeah, you can get her. But the other reality is also people don't mind anthropomorphizing things that are not as quite human as we are. Like, we do that to animals all the time, even reptiles, right? Which are probably the least, anthropic of all the human species. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. It's getting there. I think it's going to happen, and we're pretty early up in all of this in terms of embodiment layer.
So if like a say for instance, if like a user dies, who inherits the AI that's lived with them for like a decade? Does like the estate, the platform, the agent itself? Like what's your thought?
That's an answer for the lawmakers, but philosophically, it depends on whether the user created the AI. If it created it, it is kind of its child in some way. So I guess it passes along the family line. If you didn't create it and just used it and talked to it, it's kind of like a photo album, right? Which I think is still a thorny issue lawmakers are dealing with. Like, how do you how do you think about someone's iCloud account after they passed away? Who really gets it? How do we control it? How do you think about legacy? These are open questions, and I don't think I have a good answer to that, frankly.
And I think like recently, like a federal court just ruled that AI chatbots are products and not protected speech. So how does that change for everyone that's like building one?
Um, I'm not super up to date with the legal side of things. I think the protected speech thing is still something that can be contested because it is speech. It is a thing that is reasoning. It is a creation of a character of a human. Sorry, that is manifested in a character form. It's like a video game. A video game is speech. You're still playing a video game. People shoot people in the face in Grand Theft Auto. That's still protected speech to me. It's just a simulation. So I'm not sure how the ruling was made or what the context for it is and what its enforceability is, but I'm sure it's going to be contested.
So the biggest like virtual world for kids right now just rolled out like mandatory facial age checks, which I thought was kind of interesting under 80 lawsuits worth of legal pressure. Did the industry walk into that on its own, or do you think that it was always meant to end there?
It was always going to end there. I mean, when I was a kid in the 90s, we grew up on Newgrounds. We watched all sorts of ridiculous content on the internet. We played all sorts of ridiculous games. It was going to happen at some point. The problem was always that back then you couldn't have humans exploit other humans. That's the risk factor now. The vector for games being a system where adults can take advantage of children is actually hugely dangerous and something that needed to be considered earlier. So I'm just thinking about it as this is going to happen at some point, but I honestly believe this is a parenting failure. Parents are supposed to be the one who are monitoring the kind of products their children use. You can't have the state come in and be a nanny state. The parent needs to know. And I think that's part of it is the education of parents to know exactly what kids are doing on Roblox. My parents didn't like the fact that I played Grand Theft Auto, but I loved it. It was pretty harmless back then. Wouldn't say the same for Roblox today.
And then just last question before we wrap this up. Like right now, 4 states this year passed laws requiring AI characters to declare that they're not human. So is that the right disclosure, or is it just kind of like theater to like miss the
It's
actual point?
theater. It's theater. When a technology is this early, pretty much everything that happens is theater. Until there's real consequences, it's just theater. And the same stuff happened with video games back in the 90s and 2000s. We all remember that one lawyer who'd love to sue Rockstar Games. It's theater to me.
Well, thanks so much, Vishnu, for hopping on and
Yeah, I hope that was good.
yeah. No, I learned a lot about this. Like character AI has always been something of interest to me. Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah, it's also a very interesting um derivative of how to use a language model because usually a lot of people they use language models to like get an information and not use it to like just interact on like a personal basis. So I thought that's a very interesting way to use like generative AI because I know like in like South Korea for instance there's a big uh problem where like they're not having a lot of kids, and a lot of the people there are turning to like these artificial companions to like to provide some type of companionship with them. And so there's a big surge overseas of people using these character chatbots just purely for like companionship. Have you seen that?
yeah. I think that's a societal problem. It's the same thing that happened. I mean, for off the record, back in the day with escorting, and like prostitution. People are lonely, therefore they will find a salve to their loneliness. People need something they'll find a salve to the loneliness. To me, that's a failure mode for AI. I think that AI can be so much greater. It can be a true entity, closer to like a friend that you play video games with, or friends you just like talk to, rather than just a single use object. And I think the idea of a single use object is a failure point for AI.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, and for the listeners at home, stay curious.